What it do, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. This is the second of this, what I'll call, for now, mini-series. Perhaps it'll become a long series, depending on how much fruit it bears. But Cartridge Showdown. We just kind of did a heavyweight version, the 9.3 by 62 versus a 35 Whelen. Let's do a welterweight. How about the venerable veteran of the deer woods, 243, one of my favorite calibers, versus the new, or newer, cutting edge round, the 6mmCreedmoor. It's got Creedmoor in the name. Does that make it better? We'll get into that. That's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into the day's topic, I'm trying something new. Instead of doing the full-length bio on every episode in the beginning, I may throw it in at the end. I may just mention what's pertinent. Establish some street cred. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. As it pertains to today's topic, state rifle and pistol champion a few times over, West Coast regional rifle champion. I have been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast. I have slayed all manner of beasts and been a professional big game hunter and guide. I think that's enough for this episode today. If you want a full-length bio, then check out a full-length episode. So, I mentioned the 243 as one of my go-to hunting rounds, for a rifle that is. Once upon a time when I moved to Idaho, I went to Walmart. Sounds like the beginning of a great story, right? No, but I went in there and I saw a compact, I don't know what the actual name of the model is, but a compact, lightweight Remington 700. This is pre their last bankruptcy, I do believe. It was quite a while ago. 700 for, I want to say it was less than $400. In 243. I wanted a light, handy mountain rifle. Hike all back in the wilderness, and as where most other hunters wouldn't go. Bought that rifle. I put a scope on it that was on a rifle a buddy gave me, Redfield. I hunted Idaho with that. I've slain a number of beasts with that rifle. I have slain every elk I've ever shot with that 243, and some people will say 243 is not enough for elk. But myself and many others actually hunt elk out west will tell you it is enough. If you have proper shot placement and are good at not taking shots you don't believe will be effective. That being said, I have hunted all over. And also, when I was a professional big game hunter and guided an exotic game ranch, there's two real common calibers for the guides. The clients would have a lot of times whatever the latest, greatest thing is, but the guides, and even the owner, two real popular calibers, 30-06 and 243. Those were by far, I think, the most popular. That should tell you something. There's something to that cartridge. It's a good cartridge. If you don't know, the 243 is basically a 308 necked down to 243 caliber or 6mm. I like the 243. I think it is one of the best deer and deer-sized animals, meaning whitetail, mule deer, blacktail deer, pronghorn calibers, period. Now my other, and what became my go-to guide rifle, was a 6.5 Kimber Adirondack. Mostly because I really wanted that rifle. I wanted a lighter, handier rifle. That rifle is sub 5 pounds. I wanted it, honestly, in a different caliber, but 6.5 Creedmoor is what I could find it in. I bought it. I really like that rifle, and not for the reason the Creedmoor actually became a thing, not for super long-range shooting. I'm a spot and stalk and still hunter. Primarily. I'll sit down in a stand or something if I have to, but I'm primarily that kind of hunter, so I don't generally shoot long shots. That 6.5 Creedmoor has put down many a beast as well, so I have nothing against Creedmoor and the next generation. I would consider a Gen 4 cartridge. Just did a whole podcast on generations of cartridges, so you may want to go back and give that a listen. So I have nothing against a Creedmoor either. I don't own a 6mm Creedmoor, but I don't have anything against it. In fact, if and when I ever rebarrel that old Remington 700, I would look long and hard at the 6mm Creedmoor. So let's get into the two, just some basic numbers and math. right? I'm going to try and do this impartially. You shall do no injustice in judgment and measurements of length, weight, or volume. That's straight up God's law. Now let's look at Wikipedia page has to say about the 6mmCreedmoor. A neck down version of the 6.5 using 6mm or 243 inch bullets, lighter than 6.5mm bullets with similar reduced recoil. Says here, John Snow at Outdoor Life built a 6mm Creedmoor rifle in 2009 for a magazine article of the Wildcat cartridge that appeared in 2010. But the first documented conception of the 6mm Creedmoor was by Lee Gardner, a Sniper Hide forum user, in May 2009. As of May 2018, Savage Arms offers 3 bolt-action rifles and 1 semi-automatic rifle chambered in 6mm Creedmoor. As of May 2018, Hornady offers, and it goes through their loadings that they offer. It says that the Creedmoor is nearly identical to 243 with slightly less powder room, but often loaded to slightly higher pressures. However, since the cartridge was designed from the onset to better handle longer bullets and rifles accordingly built with faster twist rates, 6mm Creedmoor will usually give better performance with heavy caliber bullets than the 243. Now, normally I would compare load data in Cartridges of the World or my hand loading manual or even here from the Wikipedia, but it doesn't actually list the same kind of data it does for both the 243 and the 6 Creedmoor. So I'm going to go to one of my other trusty sources, Midway USA. I don't get any sponsors. I have no corporate sponsors. I just like Midway. I've used them for years. It's a big company with a wide array, so that's going to give us a pretty good idea, I think, and be fair and consistent. Alright, I'm going to go with what I think are some of the most common, or at least very common loadings for the 243. Winchester PowerPoint, right? A classic 100 grain with a velocity of 2960. This is right off the specifications, I assume, from the manufacturer listed on Midway. So we got 100 grain at 2960. Here is my go-to factory load for the 243, Federal PowerShock 100 grain. And it is listed with a velocity of 2960. So that's 2 witnesses. That's a pretty good number. 100 grain at 2960. And we mentioned this cartridge's use as a varmint cartridge. I pulled up what I would consider out of the factory options one of the most popular 55 grain loads, Winchester silver tip. And it lists a 55 grain bullet at 3910. That's booking it. Again, compare that to, a 55 grain, which is pretty common, and a 223 to give you an idea of the power. 3910. So actually, looking at the 6mm Creedmoor, same place, Midway USA, Remington Corelock. I would consider that a pretty standard hunting cartridge, even if it's a newer option in the 6mm Creedmoor. We're looking at 100 grain here. So let's look at it. 100 grain. And velocity, it says supersonic. So that's not super helpful and very odd, I think. So let's look at Federal. Federal lists a 105 grain. You're looking at a velocity of 3025. 3025. 105 grain. 5 grains more velocity, but you're looking at 3025. And actually, there's a few options listed, but that's really the only 2 options from a big ammo manufacturer that I can find. And I would like to compare, again, as apples to apples as I can. But Hornady is not as big as the big ammunition manufacturers, I'd say, like Remington and Winchester, but it's pretty big. So this is 108 grain ELD, and this is a Hornady match bullet. And that is listing a 108 grain at 2960. So there you go, 2960. That number should sound familiar. This is a 108 grain versus 100 grain. So that's something. And actually, this one, I don't see any good varmint options. I mean, you could certainly kill varmints with them, but the lightest grain weight I see is 90 grain. We can still consider that more of a medium game than a varmint cartridge, assuming it has good bullet construction. And we're looking here at a 90 grain at 3325. So now let's go to another category. This power is only one part of the equation. Let's look at factory options. When I look up factory options for factory ammo, When I look up the 6mm Creedmoor, I got 25. 25 options for factory ammo. That's nothing to sneeze at, right? That's quite a bit more than like a 9.3 by 62 or a 35 Wayland. So it's not obscure, even though it's a fairly new cartridge. And I get 59 results. Same search, even weeding out the 243 Winchester Super Short Mag, which is probably another cartridge we could throw in here, but we're going to stay on topic. 59 results. So the clear winner is the 243 Winchester for that. Now let's talk about reloading. I became a neo-nomad to do the podcast and cut out rent and live like a nomad. One of the things I gave up was reloading because it's got quite a bit of infrastructure. However, be advised, I have reloaded since my youth. I've cast lead bullets. I've done all that since I was very young. Probably too young to be safely handling molten lead, but there I was. As Elmer Keefe might say, heck, I was there, pouring molten lead as a boy. But I'm familiar with the process of reloading. So I'm looking at these from a reloading standpoint. You might make the case that hand loading is going to go to the 243 because it's necked down 308 brass, and 308 is one of the most common brass. However, I'm not going to make that case. I'm going to say it's pretty much dead even here. Maybe a very, very tiny nudge in the direction of the 243 because 6.5 Creedmoor is super common. It has taken the market by storm since it was introduced in the 2000 and aughts. It is not uncommon. And you can neck that down just like you can neck down 308 brass to 243. You can neck down 6mm Creedmoor brass from 6.5 Creedmoor, which is pretty common. Not as common as 308, but it's not obscure. It's not like trying to find 35 Remington brass. Like trying to find, 223 Winchester Super Short Mag brass. It's not like that. They're pretty common. And they use the same bullets. They use 6mm or .243 bullets. You could take the 100 grain bullet out of one and put it in the other and vice versa. It's not that you couldn't load your bullets in the 243, it's that the twist rate doesn't really allow for it. It's a big handicap on the 6mm Remington, which is slightly more powerful. But without going down that rabbit hole, for factory barrels and factory options, you're going to be able to run accurately and give better concentricity in flight, spinning that bullet fast enough with a 6mm Creedmoor with heavier bullets. And you can probably load lighter bullets just fine in a 6mm Creedmoor for it. So in hand loading, you get a little bit more flexibility, I think, in the 6mm Creedmoor. Let me look that up to verify. And just the first load I pulled up, I looked, and it does in fact give load data for 55 grain bullets, so you can go down that far. It lists a max velocity. Now this is not apples to apples because this is a custom load versus a factory load, but velocity from the first load I pulled up with the first powder, which I'm not going to give specific load data on here, is from 3742 to 4,055 feet per second. That's impressive. So again, I'm going to call it pretty much a dead wash. It might be easier to find components for the 243, but you get more flexibility if you hand load with the 6 Creedmoor. I can go from that 55 grain to 108 grain, maybe even heavier. So there is that. So factory ammo, nod goes to the 243. Reloading, the nod goes to the 6 Creedmoor. If you're looking for flexibility and versatility, if you're looking for commonality of brass, it goes to the 243. I'm just wondering out there, is anybody else out there trying to record a podcast with their 100 and some pound Rhodesian Ridgeback demanding attention? I'm just wondering. Easy pop. Alright. Down. I might leave that in there just for fun. Now let's talk about performance downrange. Talking about target shooting, long distance, the 6mm Creedmoor clearly wins that. There's no real debate on that. Again, I'm talking long distance. That's what it was made for. Super high. It's that Gen 4 cartridge. A little bit less case capacity, but longer, sleeker bullets. They buck the wind better. They have better ballistics coefficient, which if you don't know is basically just the bullet's ability to slice through air efficiently. Does better for that. That's the reason why it was designed. So for long range target shooting, it gets the nod. I would not recommend long range medium to large game hunting with this cartridge. I know people have probably done it. I think there's better choices. I'm not big on long range hunting like that to begin with. But if I was going to do it, probably want something with a little bit more heft because you lose velocity downrange. That round is not nearly carrying the same energy at 500 yards as it is at 75 yards. So I would beef it up if I was going to do that to a bigger, heavier cartridge. And a minor increase to like the 6.5 I would take over this round if I was doing longer distance hunting, which again, I'm not a big fan of. But if you're looking for long range target shooting, I'd say the 6 Creedmoor takes the cake. And that's the reason it was developed. That's the reason I believe it was wildcatted, to allow long range shooting with less recoil to stay on target, more efficient than the 6.5 Creedmoor. So it clearly wins that. Now let's talk about downrange hunting application, right? And this is where I might surprise you because I've told you of my success and everything with the 243. If I was looking at a medium to large game, if I was just looking at hunting deer and elk and black bear at, let's say, what I would call traditional hunting ranges, then I'm going to give the nod to the 6mm Creedmoor because it gives you longer bullets, gives you heavier bullets. You can load heavier bullets, and 243 is already on the light range of that. If I'm developing a hand load, I can probably find a decent game bullet. Now, be advised, if you're talking about factory options, a lot of these rounds are designed for target shooting, and they are target bullets. They are like target match bullets. I don't recommend those for hunting, especially if you're on a marginal caliber size for that game. Right? A match bullet is no match, no pun intended, for a Nosler partition or a Remington Corlock or something like that. But if you can get a little bit heavier bullet with a good bullet construction, that nod is going to go to the 6 Creedmoor, surprisingly. But I have to admit, I'm trying to be unbiased here. I did see that Remington Corlock did offer a bullet, even if it's 100 grain, a 6mm Creedmoor. I have the potential, if I'm going to hand load heavier bullets than I can with a factory rifle anyway, and it was designed for those heavier, sleeker bullets. Interesting to see if you could get a good round nose, a low ballistics coefficient heavy for caliber bullet and what that might do on game. But anyway, for big game, I'm giving the nod to the 6 Creedmoor. Now let's talk about the 243 shines, or I should say outshines the 6 Creedmoor. For a good crossover, varmint and medium game round. The 243, you get factory options. You don't have to hand load. You can get factory options in 55 grain. Factory options in 100 grain. They're both well known, respectively, for their varmint killing ability and their medium game killing ability. 243, 100 grain load is an established, whitetail and mule deer caliber and a bullet selection and grain weight. The 55 grain 243 is got a reputation, I think, for good coyote hunting ability. And anything coyote and down, if you're talking about varmint hunting, really the only reason you don't want overkill is because the rounds cost more. But you can certainly shoot a prairie dog with a 55 grain 243 round. It's flat shooting. You can shoot groundhogs. You can shoot, fox. You can shoot coyotes. It's a good established round for that. So I think if you're looking for a crossover round, that's the one. All right, so let's do a clear recap here. If you're talking about history, if you're talking about street cred, the 243 gets the nod. It has been putting whitetail and mule deer down for over 50 years. It is a good, well-established cartridge. It's also a good, well-established varmint cartridge. Really good coyote hunting choice. If you want established street cred, it gets the nod. If you want factory options, like I mentioned Midway USA, but if I was going to guess driving around to different Walmarts which round I would find first, I would guess I would find 243 first. Who knows, could be an ammo shortage and all the 243 is gone and there's a bunch of 6 Creedmoor because a place where nobody shoots 6 Creedmoor. But in general, I'd say your factory options, I'm judging by Midway USA, are far more with this 243 than they are with the 6 Creedmoor. So factory options, nod goes to the 243. Let's talk about reloading again to recap. If you're talking about availability of components, I say 243 gets the nod. If you're talking about flexibility of reloading from light bullets to heavy bullets, then the 6mm Creedmoor gets the nod. So I'm going to call it even in that category because it really depends on what you want in reloading. Do you want to find components easier? or do you want to be able to load up and down the spectrum more? Let's talk about hunting. I mentioned for the higher end of the scale, I think Creedmoor, the 6mm Creedmoor gets a nod. If you're talking about a dual purpose, I'm going to hunt coyotes and deer, I think the 243 gets the nod. If you're talking about long-range target shooting, the 6 Creedmoor definitely gets the nod on that. So it's not which one is better, it's which one's better for you. Do you hand load and want any super flexible caliber with a great range of bullet weight? Then that might sway you one way or another. Do you just want to be able to go to Walmart and buy ammo? That's certainly going to sway you one way or another. Want something with some history to it? Do you want a nice walnut blued steel rifle hunt in red plaid like your father or grandfather? That's going to sway you one way or another. Here's one I just thought of, and I should have done it before I did a quick recap, but I looked for gun availability, as in Midway USA guns available in both chamberings. 243, 81 options. And for the 6mm Creedmoor, 11 options. 11 is not nothing, but it's not 81. So availability in different rifles, clearly the 243 gets that one. Here's another thing I should mention, the 6mm Creedmoor. Will it catch on? The 6.5 Creedmoor certainly did. Or will it be a flash in the pan? 243 I don't think is going anywhere. It's pretty easy to assume that in 10 years, assuming we can still buy guns and ammo in this country, we can buy the 243. Will you be able to say the same thing for the 6mm Creedmoor? Or will it be more like the 243 WSSM, which you can still find ammo for, but not commonly? That's another thing to consider. So I hope that you enjoy these versus cartridge episodes. I'm trying to be as fair and unbiased here as I can. Hopefully you appreciate that. I'm not sponsored by some big fancy gun company or ammo company saying you gotta have the next latest and greatest thing. Sometimes newer stuff is better. Sometimes newer stuff is just a way to separate you from your money. I think the 6 Creedmoor in certain circumstances has some advantages. I think in other arenas the 243 still holds to be a better cartridge than the newer cartridge. It depends on you and what you want. But hopefully this has been able to give you a clear, unbiased, sober view of the two cartridges and which one might be best for you. With that, don't want to miss the tactical verse of the day. I'm going to throw in the tactical verse of the day and then talk about our giveaway we have going on this month. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Amen. You want more of that? I'd be humbled if you checked out Simple Man Sermons. That's the flagship podcast, if you don't know, and what I consider the most important one. And if you're into manly ministry, you may check out Alpha Male Podcast. Anyway, instead of doing the full bio, I'm going to talk about the giveaway. We're giving away an SOG bushcraft knife. It would be great on a plate carrier. It would be great boning out an elk on the side of a mountain. It's a good fixed blade knife. Giving that away. Also giving away a sling bag that carries a full-size fighting handgun. It fits my wife's full-size M&P rather well. I'm giving away both those. There'll be pictures of those on the Patreon page. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a way you can support the podcast. Hopefully what you'll think on there is some really useful content for you. Content only available to patrons. Some is available to everybody, like the giveaway announcement or some tips on one-handed shooting, but some of that stuff, some of the shooting videos and instructional videos are just available for patrons. Also, if you'd like to be part of a group chat where we talk pretty much on a daily basis, except for Sabbath I take off, some good manly topics, anything from Bible ministry to a lot of gun talk. That group of like-minded good men that I'm humbled to be a part of. That chat, that's available for you if you become a patron. And again, if you have thought you want to support the podcast and you want the ability to win those two things, $5 patron will get you entered to win that. I'll raffle it off to one winner at the end of the month, and that's the month of January 2023. Thanks, and have a blessed day.